We've already introduced you to the interval of the third. Now we're going to continue our discussion. Once you're getting comfortable with that, let's talk about how we can extend this to any third, starting on any note. So here's an important idea. If I move both notes by the same amount, the distance between them doesn't change. Just like if I'm measuring the distance from this asterisk to that one, and then move each of them the same amount to the right, I move them each one tab, the distance hasn't changed between them, even though the location of them has changed. So musically speaking, if C to E is a major third and I raise both notes a half step, C sharp to E sharp is still a major third. But be careful, use E sharp here, not F natural, otherwise it's not still a third. In other words, if I had C sharp to F natural, I'm counting C, D, E, F, and those are 4 letters I'm counting, not 3. So in this case, if it's going to be a third and the bottom is C sharp, you have to spell the upper part of the third with some kind of an E, in this case E sharp. We could see this on the clock, for example, that we can move half steps in this direction going up or in that direction going down. And if, let's say, D to F is a minor third, then D sharp to F sharp would also be a minor third. Or in the other direction, D flat to, I haven't written it here, but E natural is also an F flat, and that would be a minor third as well. So the idea is to keep the distance the same between them, move them each exactly the same amount. So this is what I had just told you. This is true for any interval up or down. So if E to G is a minor third, E flat to G flat is still a minor third. This means that if you're having a problem with a particular interval, if you don't recognize it, then put it in a form that you can recognize, and then you can identify the interval. So for example, if you saw something like a G sharp to a B sharp and you didn't know what that was, you do know that would be the same interval as G natural to B natural. In other words, lower each one a half step and we get the same interval. And finally, we notice that major thirds span 4 half steps and minor thirds span 3 half steps. That means we can turn a major third into a minor third by narrowing the interval half a step. We can do this either by lowering the top note without changing the letter name, of course, otherwise it's not still a third, or raising the bottom note. Likewise, we can turn a minor third into a major third by widening the interval a half step, by raising the top note, or by lowering the bottom note. So here are some examples of what I'm talking about. If C to E is a major third, then I can narrow that by lowering the top from E to E flat. So this is major third and this is minor third. Or I can raise the bottom, just so you know that's back to E natural. So that's a minor third. In the first case, I took the E natural and brought it down a half step. In the second case, I took the C natural and brought it up a half step. One way or another, if I'm moving one note closer to the other one, then the distance between them is getting smaller, it's narrowing. And in the other case, let's say we've got a D to an F, that I can make that minor third a major third by making it wider by raising the top, or by lowering the bottom. Because when you move two things a little further away from each other, the interval between them is getting bigger. That's a lot to cover just to identify one type of interval. But these ideas will help with the rest of the intervals. So how do we practice this? Start with the 5 major scales that we covered. Identify each of the thirds in the scales. Remember that the third from 1 to 3 is going to be major, from 2 to 4 is minor, from 3 to 5 is minor, 4 to 6 is major, 5 to 7 is major, 6 up to 1 is minor, and 7 past 1 up to 2 is minor. Next, see if you could identify these without looking at the scales themselves. Then you could expand what you know by changing the thirds you just learned into the other type by widening major thirds to make, by widening minor thirds to make major thirds, or by narrowing major thirds to make minor thirds. Finally, look at any third that you can find and compare that to what you already know and see if it's the same distance apart, or if it's wider, or if it's narrower. Okay, that sounds like that's a lot to practice, so you've got your work cut out for you. But knowing about thirds is very important, especially when we're building chords and for many of the other things we're doing with music. That's all for this video.